Hey everybody, Charlie Stevens here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another guitar lesson. In this video we're going to learn how to make an A-shaped bar chord. So please watch the lesson on E-shaped bar chords if you haven't seen that one yet, because I kind of explain the technique of how to make an efficient bar, how to use the side of our finger, how to use the weight of this arm, okay, and that's all relevant to this as well. Now, the only difference in this lesson is that we're going to use a different shape. We're going to use an A shape under our bar instead of a E shape. Okay? That will also change where the root of the chord is. Instead of the root being on the low 6th string, the low E string, it's now going to be on the 5th string, the A string. Okay? So, we get our bar going. As we already discussed, we can bar at the 1st fret here. And then we can do an A minor or an A major shape. Let's start with the A minor because it's the same as the E shape, right? E and A minor, they look the same. They're just on different strings, right? So just like we did for E, we'll play this A minor, and now we'll change our fingering. So usually we'd have an open A, we'd have the 2nd fret of the D string, 2nd fret of G, 1st fret of B, open E. Okay, and we'd use our 2nd finger on the D string, our 3rd finger on the G string, and our 1st finger on the B string. That's typically how we would do it, right? Right now, we're going to change our fingers around. And now I'm going to use my 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of D, pinky finger on the 2nd fret of G, and my 2nd finger on the 1st fret of B. Okay, so now that I have that, I can move it up a fret. Here it sounds weird because those open strings did not move with me, so that's where the bar comes in. Now I do my bar, I lay that all the way across, boom, and I have an A minor shaped bar chord. That's no longer A minor. What is it? Well, I have to look where the bar is. The bar is at the 1st fret. Is this an E shape? No, it's an A shape, so I'm not looking at the note on my E string, I'm looking at the note on my A string. Okay, so A sharp. We more oftentimes will call this note B flat for theoretical reasons that aren't very important right now, but we'll call it B flat today, but it's the exact same thing as A sharp, okay? This note on the 1st fret. So, you could either call this an A sharp minor chord, or more commonly it's usually referred to as a B flat minor chord, okay? So that's what we got here. We changed our fingers around. Instead of having the pinky being not doing anything, we played that exact same shape with different fingers. So now our index finger wasn't doing anything. Now we moved it up, we can bar it, and we got it. B minor, C minor, C sharp minor. This is the one we learned in the last video way up here. Now it's here. This is a more practical place to play that. You don't have to go way up here. I have another way of playing C sharp minor now, right? So this is pretty cool stuff. Okay, so that's how we would do this. That's how the A minor works. Now if I needed a major chord, let's say I wanted to make this B flat a major chord. Well, I'd have to make it look like an A major chord. So an A is, I do it with 2 fingers usually. This finger is squishing down, which is actually technically a mini bar. I'm squishing down the D and the G string, and then I take my 2nd finger and I play the B string, all at the 2nd fret. That's how A major works, right? But we could do it with all 3 different fingers. We could do it with these 3 different fingers. So I'll do 2nd finger, 2nd fret D, 3rd finger, 2nd fret G, pinky finger, 2nd fret B. A major. Now when I move that up 1 fret, sounds kind of cool, but the open strings didn't come, so I have to bar here, and there we go. Now I have a B flat major chord. Looks like an A shape, and that's why the root is on the A string. Since this note is B flat on the A string, this is a B flat chord. Now we have a B major chord because this note on the 2nd fret of the A string is B natural, right? So then I make a B major by adding an A shape here. What if I wanted B minor? Well, I rearrange my fingers to make that shape look like the A minor, B minor. Cool, right? So we're learning so many chords at the same time in this lesson because we can play whatever chord we want. It's not like before where we had to do a whole lesson on just one chord. Now this lesson is basically all the chords, okay? Before we only knew how to play B7. We didn't know how to play a B. Well, this is how you play B. Cool, right? This is how you play C. 1, one fret higher because B doesn't have a sharp, so at the 3rd fret. There's the cowboy chord C we learned. There's the bar chord C. Okay, so I'm using 3 different fingers, but I could actually use 2, where this 3rd finger is barring across D and G, and now my pinky finger is just swooping in to get the B string. Or I could use even 1 finger to do that. So that's kind of like a little bar happening over here now. I'm doing a little bar. It's hard to get this finger out of the way. Sorry, I'm trying to show you what I'm doing. Maybe I'll tuck this behind the guitar. I never like to have this actually tucked behind the guitar when I'm playing. That's bad technique. I want it out in front so I can play. But for purposes of showing you what's going on, I'm going to put it behind the neck, okay? But try not to copy that because that's just something I'm doing for the purpose of making it easier for you to understand visually, okay? Anyway, now we got rid of that one. You can see that I have a bar here across all 6, and since I don't really use the low E when I play my A string, I actually don't have to go all the way to the E. I can just do a 5-string bar if that's easier to do, and then I have to be careful not to play the E though. The benefit of doing all 6 is if you accidentally get the low E, that's actually okay. You still want to kind of start your strum on the A string, but if you happen to accidentally do it on the E string, that's still part of the chord. But if I didn't have anything in there and just had an open open E, in this case it's part of this particular chord because I have another E right here, so it's not super egregious, but in certain places that would sound really weird. So you're kind of better off barring across all 6 strings anyway, but with the A shapes, you really are kind of aiming to start at the 5th string. You don't necessarily need to go all 6 if you want to be careful not to hit the low E, okay? So anyway, that's it with 1 finger. I have this one barring down all 6, this one barring down these 3 right here, and that's a C major. Sounds different than that C major. That's why we want to know all these, right? We'll have different options for what we call voicings, which are basically the same chord in different places of the neck usually, and where the notes in the chords are arranged in different orders, and that makes them sound different. That's what we refer to as voicings, okay? All right, so that's really all I have for you in this lesson. Super simple. Very similar to the E-shaped bar chords we learned, but now this one is just with A, okay? So now that we know those two, E and A, let's do some experimentation here, and I'll kind of pick a chord and I'll have you help me figure out what it is. Okay, how about this one? Okay, well, first of all, what shape do I see here? I'm not using this finger, and I'm squishing down 3 strings there. So that looks like an A major, this part, right? So we're going to say that this is an A-shaped bar chord. Not A minor, it's A major. So we know this is a major type chord. Now all we need to do is figure out what chord it is. Is it a G chord? Is it a C chord? Is it a D major? Let's figure it out, right? How do we figure it out? Well, it's an A-shaped chord, so we need to look at what's happening at the A string. So on the A string, this finger is playing the A string, where the bar is. Okay, so what fret is that? Let's see. That's the 6th fret. So A sharp, or B flat, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, also known as E flat. Okay, so you could call this chord either D sharp or E flat. And for the same reason that B flat is more common than A sharp, E flat happens to be more common than D sharp, in my opinion. I would maybe think of this as an E flat. However, that will depend on what certain keys will have a proper way to put the proper label on a chord, and that's all very theoretical and not important to this lesson today. It's cool to understand that, but it's not something that we want to get bogged down with today, okay? So you could call this one either E flat or D sharp. E flat is more common, so we're going to call it that. This is an E flat chord. Okay, what if I wanted to play an E flat chord somewhere else? What if, how else could I do that? This is an A-shaped one, could I find an E flat with an E? Well, sure I could. Where is an E flat note on my E string? Well, we're at E on the open string, so E flat would be further this way. I don't have an E flat that way. So I can go all the way to my 12th fret. What happens at the 12th fret? we've gone an octave. We've used all 12 notes in our musical alphabet, and now we've started over. So the 12th fret is E, meaning that the 11th fret is E flat, right? So that means I can make a bar here, and now I have to make it look like an E chord shape because I found that on the E string. E flat, E flat. Okay, so now you can play any chord you want. Okay, even if you're looking up a song and you're going, oh great, this is an easy song, I know all these chords, but wait, E flat, what the heck, I don't know that one. Now you know it. Okay, let's say all the rest of your chords are in a certain area of the neck, you know, probably over here, then you can play your E flat over here, so it's more close with everything else you're playing. Let's say all the chords you're playing are more over here and you need an E flat. Now you have one over here. So it's going to depend on what you're playing and where you're at, and usually we look for things that are close, and that's easier to find and play. So yeah, so now you can play any chord. How do we do E flat minor? Well, if it was root 5, meaning an A shape, we would make this into an A minor looking shape. That's an E flat minor. If we were doing our E flat over here, we take this finger off, making the shape look more like an E minor, and boom, we have an E flat minor. Okay, now you know how to play every major and minor chord, and you actually have 2 ways to play each one. You could either root it on the E string or the A string. Okay, so the main takeaway is if the chord shape looks like an E or an E minor, then the root of that chord is going to be on the E string, meaning whatever fret you're barring at, you have to figure out what note that is on the E string. 5th fret, that's A, so that means this is an A major chord, that's an A minor chord. Okay? If your root is on the 5th string, you make it look like an A chord or an A minor. And then you look at what's happening on that string. What's that? 5th fret of A is what note? We learned that from tuning. It's supposed to match the next string. What is the next string? D. So that means this note is D. That means this is a D major. This is a D minor. We can verify that by playing the cowboy chord versions of those that we know, right? Okay, cool. So hopefully this is making sense. I've noticed with some students that this is takes a little bit of time to get the hang of it. I think that this is pretty simple, and I like this way of explaining it, so hopefully this is connecting with you. If not, leave me a comment and maybe we can get to the bottom of it together. But the main takeaway is if it looks like an E chord, the note in which the chord is named is going to be on the E string. Okay? If it looks like an A chord, the note in which the chord is named is going to be on the A string. And you have your major and minor varieties. Okay? That's it. That doesn't take care of diminished and augmented triads, but those are far less common. Okay? Major and minors are far more common. So now with this method, you can play any chord that you want, any major or minor chord you want, and you have 2 options to play them. Okay? So I hope you have a lot of fun with that. If you're enjoying this course, please subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you in another guitar lesson really soon. Thanks again.